Good morning, beautiful people. How are you? It is Sarah Willoughby from willoughby.com. Today, I am with the beautiful Jelina Shah, and we are going to talk about diabetes. How do we break up with diabetes? I am so excited to have this conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jelina. How are you?
Oh my gosh. Hi. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. I think it's a topic that most of us have heard about, but we don't necessarily understand. So I would love for you just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about how you got into this area of work.
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Jelina Shah. I am a clinical pharmacist and a holistic diabetes health coach. I help people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes reverse their condition by using the least amount of medications needed and no fat diets, no calorie counting, no strenuous exercise to achieve this goal. So I love this area. And I got started because I actually have a family history of diabetes. So
Okay.
my dad has diabetes and several family members, and I even had like an uncle pass away from complications related to the disease. So, we rewind a few years ago and I was 65 pounds heavier, and I go in for my classic checkup. I'm in there and the doctor walks in. She is not looking thrilled. She's shaking her head and she just looks up at me and she was just like, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when you're going to get diabetes. And in that moment, it was just like my heart dropped to my stomach. And I felt completely overwhelmed, confused, and super ashamed. It's like, how did I get here? I knew, it's like a piece of you kind of knows that, I'm like, oh, I kind of let things go. Probably should have worked out a little more, should have eaten, ate better. But, so how did I get here? And the only piece of advice she left me when I was leaving was, eat healthier and exercise more. And, like, what do I do with that advice? And the one thing I'll say is that this isn't uncommon for a lot of people, and a lot of us don't even know. I mean, 1 out of 3 people have prediabetes, which is basically where I was at, and 80% aren't even aware of it.
Okay.
And we have like people that have insulin resistance, which is another way of saying the same thing. And it's just so scary to think that this is happening all across the nation, and so many people across the world are dealing with this. So I did my own, kind of experimentation and trying to figure things out. And I realized through that I was able to lose this weight and lose it a lot easier. I mean, it was a struggle in the beginning when I was trying to figure things out, but once I did figure it out, and I eventually was working for a company where I worked primarily with people that had really severe diabetes. And I was working with these people that had such severe diabetes. I was the last stop before they went to like the specialist.
Okay.
And the whole point of my job, because I'm a pharmacist, they want me to like move their insulin doses around, make sure they're on the right meds. But there is a piece of me that's ironically doesn't really like medications, even though I'm a pharmacist. So I started to interject. I know the irony. So I just
Yeah,
started
funny.
to interject like little tidbits that I was using to have lost my weight to get healthy. And I started to realize like people just weren't even aware what was going on in their bodies. And that aside from medicine, there are other ways to take care of this disease.
Absolutely. Are you able to share with us some of the things that worked for you? I know it might be different for each of us, but what worked for you?
Yeah, I first started, I went on Dr. Google, and as most of us do when we're like, trying to figure things out. And
Yes.
Dr. Google was very, very contradictory. So Google had all sorts of things on my search engine. It was like, this is healthy and this isn't. And like, eggs are great. And then another source is saying, don't dare eat eggs and drink the apple cider vinegar. And another source is like, it's going to ruin your teeth. So I went with what was touted at the time by the government here in the US is a low calorie, low fat diet. So I will say that did get some of the weight off. I think I was more conscious and I was watching what I was eating. But I will also say this. The problem with that is that at least when I went to the doctor initially, I would say it was like, I'll call myself, I was like fat, but I was full. At the point that I was like, I had lost some of the weight, I was still really overweight and I was always hungry, always hungry. And
Okay.
I would like longingly look at food. Like it was running across my mind. I was thinking about it all the time. I went to book club one time and I saw my friend. She's just like eating all the cheese and the crackers and drinking the wine. And and she had just lost 60 pounds. And I was like, what is happening here? I'm like looking at this food and the needle is moving in a direction I am not happy with just by even looking at this. And I asked her and she told me what she was doing. And it turns out she was doing some mindset stuff. And it wasn't until I learned one about how food actually works in the body, because the scientist in me, the pharmacist in me is always fascinated with that. But I learned that piece. And then from there, I learned that there's a big piece of it was my mindset. So once I learned what foods weren't going to cause my blood sugars to skyrocket and was going to help keep me full and still taste delicious, I was able to have a lot more freedom around that. And then when I started to learn some mindset stuff, like what was causing me to eat in the way that I was eating? I mean, we all know cupcakes, they taste better than broccoli, but we know that broccoli is better for us. And I get that. But there's also a component of me that felt like I was like, I had to have the cupcake. The cravings were so strong. And it wasn't until I started to do a deep dive behind that I started to see where I needed to make some shifts in my mindset. And I think that was the missing piece for me. And that's what has helped me keep this weight off and keep me healthy long term.
Awesome. I obviously work in the space of mindset too, which is really like I love understanding our minds and what motivates us and all the crazy things that go on in there. So talk to me a little bit about some of the stories maybe that you were telling yourself around food, or some of the things that were blocking you in that area.
Oh man, I would always look at people that were like thinner than me and I'm like, oh, I just have a different body type. Like my body is just like not meant to. And although there is some truth to that, I'm not saying that there isn't, because we all have different bones and structures and all of that. Me being overweight had less to do with my actual bone structure. And it was more of a reason to be like, well, I'm never going to be that skinny. So there was like a thought of like, I'm never going to be that skinny. And also I had this really bad habit of treating food like my friend. I didn't treat food like food actually is like a friend to me. It's more like a loan shark. And what I would do is I would go to food and I would be like, I'm going to eat this because I am so stressed out. I am lonely. I'm not feeling great about myself. And I would go eat that food. So like, let's say it was a cookie. I would have like a cookie or 10, no judgment, but that's what was happening. And I would eat cookies. And for a few minutes, I would feel so good. It feels so nice, all of that stuff. But then like fast forward a half hour later, and I'm still feeling sad, depressed, lonely, upset, stressed. But on top of that, now I have this added component of guilt because I just ate something that I knew wasn't nourishing my body, wasn't serving me, and was perpetuating the scale to move in a direction I didn't want. So it's like a loan shark. It's like it's collecting interest on top of whatever you're paying. So it wasn't until I started to like look at, okay, what are the other things I need to do when I'm stressed? Do I need to like call a friend? Do I need to journal? Do I need to take a break and take a few breaths? Like, how do I put some space between what I am doing and the action I'm taking?
Awesome.
That's part of it.
Yeah. And I think you've explained it beautifully when we stack our emotions on top of our emotions. And when we place judgment on top of that initial judgment, and that's when we are at risk of going into shame. And we know that shame is that lowest vibration that we feel. When we're in that space, we lack the motivation to even change what's going on for us or ask for help from other people. So thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing, your story and what's been going on for you. And I love the fact that you are a specialist in this area because you really understand that journey.
Yeah, nothing used to like make me more upset except for like when I'd go on the internet and I'd see some skinny person telling me like, oh, you don't need to worry. Like, this is how you deal with the craving. And I'm like, you don't understand cravings. Like, I will get in my car and drive somewhere because the craving is so bad. So yeah, I totally have been there and relate to how strong and intense some feelings can be and trying to avoid them. And it was from this space that I feel like I sometimes can relate to people, because it's like, man, I have been there. I sometimes like when my clients talk to me, I'm like, oh man, do I know this road? I remember what this was like. And just like that feeling, I get it.
And I think we need to have that level of empathy and that level of being able to help those people that we're working with to feel safe and seen and heard. And I know from the relationship that I have with you that you do that so beautifully. It's like you said, no judgment. And I feel that with you just in the connection that we have. So I think that for me is what sets you aside from maybe some other specialists, is that you really genuinely are coming from a place of heart that you want to help people, you want to serve, you want to change people's lives for the better. So talk to me a little bit about what to look for in a health diabetes coach.
So people are like, well, I've never even heard of this before. And I'm like, wow, let me tell you what you need to look for, because it is a specialty. And you want to make sure you find someone that, one, I would recommend finding someone that has some medical background. And the reason is like someone like a clinical pharmacist is able to assess your medications, because sometimes with these chronic diseases, we can try to get you off as many medications as possible, but sometimes there are situations and circumstances where that isn't possible. And we have to be realistic about where your body is at that time. So you want to make sure you find someone that understands the biology of the body and what you are putting into it. And you also, I would recommend someone that has, having said that, has had some experience, like at least a few years of experience with working with people one-on-one, specifically with this condition, because it is unique to every person. Every person's obstacles and their struggles are very unique. Like I said, the biology of the disease is pretty much the same in everyone. And we can take care of the physical stuff on just like the next level, like the amount of sleep and what you eat and all of that, like the food part, all of that's key. So you want to make sure that people understand those two pillars. But the last pillar, which I think is often missing and that you want to make sure you find in somebody, is, do they understand the mindset stuff? Because it's that place where transformation occurs. And this is how we can continue to keep somebody in a healthy state. And if you slip, if you fall, because we are human and things happen in our lives, it allows us to be able to remember how to get back to that state if we are taught those tools. So you want to also make sure that someone has like a basis of understanding around all three of those factors, in addition to having experience and really good biology, like understanding of the biological aspects of the disease.
Awesome. Thank you. Are you able to share with us some of the success stories that you've had with some of the people you've been working with? I'd love to hear a little bit more about those.
Yeah, it's so funny because I would get into this and initially people would be like, there are a lot of my favorites are always the skeptics. Those are my favorite people to work with, because takes a little convincing, but also when they have 1 year open. And so what I love is, like, I had this woman come in and she was like, I don't even think you can't really help me. Like, this isn't, I have diabetes, but like, I don't know if I can change anything. And I was like, you know what? I get it. Like, let's just try this for a week and we'll see what happens. And so within the first week, I gave her some tips as far as, like, I like to start with the nutrition stuff first. And we just worked on that for a little bit. then we started, and I just like kind of quietly started interjecting some mindset stuff and just kind of having her remember what it feels like when she eats certain foods. Or I think a lot of us are so out of touch with our bodies, but she started to get more in tune with what her body was feeling. And in 3 months, she had lost, I think, like about 35 pounds. She was off 2 of her meds, and she was so energetic. She was doing, when we started, she wasn't exercising at all, by the way. And by the end of it, I remember calling her and she's like, I'm getting ready for a 3-mile hike. And I was like, who is this woman? Who is this person? Because this isn't who I was talking to 3 months ago. This is like a completely, this person who is sitting in front of me, where I just got to bear witness to this entire journey. I'm like, this is a completely different person. And my favorite part of this is that not only did it affect her, because diabetes, I told you, it runs through families, right? It's generational. What's so beautiful is that she was able to pass this information on to her mother, pass this information on to her kids. They were taking bike rides together. Her kids were healthier. They were doing better in school. They also had more energy. And it was this beautiful ripple effect. She started a group with her church. She had 3 or 4 friends that were like, well, what are you doing? You lost all this weight in such a short amount of time. Like, and they all started to get together. She's like, she felt, it was so fun. We went from someone that was so skeptical to someone that was basically preaching. Like she'd get on the phone with me and be like, did you know about this and this? And I was like, oh, okay. Now you're going to be telling me how this works. Great.
I love that.
Yeah, it was wonderful. But, and the time and time again, that's the beauty of something like this, of a process like this, to bear witness to someone's journey like this. This is why I do this. It's so inspirational, and it has such an impact on not only that person, but the people around them. And that to me is like that, it builds a sense of, it's just like that community and sense of belonging and all of that. And those are some values that I hold so dear to my heart, especially belonging and community. And so I love that it's being, passed down.
Yes, absolutely. And I can feel your passion when you talk about it. It's really beautiful to feel that. But it is very true. It's about leaving a legacy for generations of people that we'll never meet.
Yes.
It all starts with one person making that decision to make that change in their life, and the ripple effect, like you said, of it impacting their families, their children, and their children's children, and the family members that they will never meet. It's really profound. This work is really needed.
Oh, thank you. It's wild to think that we are operating from a system that our parents gave us, and that our parents had given them, and so forth, right? And it's not I'm not blaming anyone. We are doing the best we can given the tools we're given. But if you're given new tools that work really, really well, why not pass those down? And in some cases, even pass them up. She was helping her mom too. So it's like when we learn and are able to adapt to new things, like that's how species like are able to survive, is when they're adaptable. So learning these types of tools and adapting to new ways of being, I think it's also key to making the necessary changes for survival and thriving.
Yeah, but it is about survival, isn't it? Because, our health is the most important thing that we have. And when we lose our health, we can't always get it back. So
yes. Yeah. And that's the hardest part. And I think that why I do work, like, especially when I was at the previous job, it was really, really difficult, because at that point the diabetes had gotten so bad, and a lot of people regret not knowing or understanding that they were en route to that condition, beforehand. And so the key is trying to catch it early. And so I do advocate. It is sometimes so scary to get the truth of things. I know so many of us fear going to the doctor, and getting labs done, because we know maybe you were like me and maybe you knew you weren't behaving or acting in a way like we quote unquote should, or you know, maybe you were overindulging, and it's so scary to actually see what the numbers are. But the one thing I encourage people also to do is just like empower yourself and go to the doctor and get tested, because the sooner you have this information, it's such a blessing. It seems really scary, but it's really a blessing, because the sooner you can take care of whatever is happening. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, we just need to be really, I don't know, like into our health, like advocate for ourselves.
Yes, yeah, we can be our best advocate for ourselves, absolutely. So if we make this personal for a minute, and I'll just share a little bit about me. So I have polycystic ovary syndrome, and one of the underlying risks for me is that I will develop diabetes at some point. And a lot of the women that I work with are also in that space, and a lot of women that have PCOS do struggle with weight. So are they women that you could help and support and work with?
Yes, because another way to say PCOS, one of the side effects of PCOS is what we call insulin resistance. And so if I may go off on a little tangent here.
I would love you to.
So there are a couple types of diabetes, and I want to be clear about who I can help and who I can't. So
yes.
Let me start with what is normal. So I'm going to use a popular analogy that there's a doctor, his name's Dr. Jason Fong, and he wrote a book called The Diabetes Code. I love this analogy, so I'm going to use it. But in a normal person, the thing about diabetes to remember is that it is a disease that's based off of food. It's how food is converted into energy in the body. So this is why it's known as a metabolic disease. So the important thing is to know is food's converted into energy. And the way food is converted into energy is all food we consume turns into sugar. All of it. Doesn't matter what it is. Sweet, savory, salty, all turns into sugar. And that's the way our cells are able to absorb it in our body. So if all food turns into sugar, we're going to say sugar is like a bunch of passengers. There are a bunch of passengers, and our cells are a bunch of trains. And so normally what happens is, you know, all the passengers are getting ready to be on the train, and we have to have a conductor, which is we're going to call our hormone insulin. So insulin is a hormone in our body that helps navigate the sugar. It tells it where to go. It's like you to the brain, you to the liver, you to the muscles. So we're going to have our conductor. He's going to come and he's going to open the doors and he's going to direct traffic. So that's insulin. So in a normal person, passengers, everybody's getting on board. He's opening the doors. Everyone's fine. Everyone's going where they need to go. Now, there's type 1 diabetes. I don't assist people with type 1 because what happens is the trains are in the station. The people are lined up to get in, but the conductor is missing. Turns out they forgot to hire the conductor. So there's no conductor, or they're very few and far in between. And this generally, what this means is the trains are leaving the station empty. And so it is actually fatal if this isn't treated by a doctor and with insulin. We do need exogenous or external insulin to be in our bodies if we have a case of type 1 diabetes. This usually gets diagnosed at a very young age for that reason. Basically, you're starving to death because all of that food isn't being sent anywhere. Which brings me to type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, or prediabetes. What this has to do with is, you know, your conductors, they've been overworking. So insulin's been there. He's been overworked. He hasn't had a vacation in years. He needs a smoke break. It hasn't happened. He's not had a lunch break. Like, he's sitting there and he is overworked. And the trains, they're getting really overfilled. Like, there are just so many people. It seems like it's always rush hour. We probably need more trains, but there just isn't. So he's kind of lazy. So he's not really opening the doors all the way. 2, the other problem is that, like, even if he isn't trying to be lazy, there are so many people already packed on the trains. He's trying to push more people on, and no one can get in. So these trains are leaving extra full, and there's just a bunch of people. So why this is important and why I can help these people is, if you think about it, we need are less passengers. if there are less passengers that need to get on the train, first of all, these overstuffed trains won't be so full all the time. And two, you won't have rush hour happening. So it is so important for someone to understand and know that. And so the types of foods that you eat play into that, because when we have things like full fat foods like avocados and nuts and olive oil, or proteins like turkey or chicken or eggs or tofu, those take hours to turn into sugar in the body. Same thing with high fiber foods like non-starchy vegetables, cucumbers, asparagus, kale. Those take hours to turn into sugar in the body. So it's like a trickling of passengers coming down to the train and then boarding. When you eat things like a carbohydrate, like let's say you decide to have a piece of pie or a big plate of pasta, it only takes 30 to 60 minutes for that food to turn into sugar. And what happens is then you create a rush hour. So you have a ton of passengers trying to board the train all at once. Your body might send out extra conductors to help manage traffic. But what happens then is then you might also have too many conductors. Once the trains start getting filled, you might have extra conductors running around too, which also doesn't feel good in your body. And it just knocks the balance off. So this is why it's so important to be balanced in the way that you eat and pay attention to the types of foods that you are eating.
Thank you for explaining that so articulately. Like, that's the first time that I've properly understood it myself. And you've created a beautiful visual as well, which I think really helps us to understand it. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Another thing I like to tell people is like, you want to make sure the passengers on your train are well-behaved, business people that are just trying to get to and from work and keeping to themselves. Like every once in a while, like a hooligan may come in with his like trying to spray paint the inside. You don't want a lot of those like rebellious types getting in on your train either. So pay attention. It's like every once in a while, sure, if one gets in, but be careful about the passengers you're letting board on the train. Like you want to keep it nice and clean. So
awesome. So I love that. I know that you have a program that you're about to launch. I would love to hear more about that and how people can join.
Yes, I'm super excited. So I am December 20th, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here in LA. So in like the US, I'm doing a live masterclass to explain what diabetes is and some tips on how to reverse it. So some real tangible things that you can start doing right away to help with your insulin. If you've got PCOS, if you want to reverse that, if you want to lose a few pounds, you want some more energy, you want to start reversing your diabetes, you don't want things to progress if you've got diabetes, please come. It's completely free. My plan is to also tape it. So if you're in a time zone, you're like, Jelina, I can't make that time. I totally get it. I will be recording it. Just sign up so that I know who to send the recording to. And, but yeah, it's just like 90 minutes. It's just going to be an explanation of what diabetes is, like how it works biologically in the body, and just some quick tips on how to kind of manage the disease, control it, or prevent it from progressing.
That sounds great. I will definitely sign up for that one.
Yay! Yes.
And I know also that you have a free gift for our audience, which I'd love you to share.
Oh, yeah. So on top of that, what's fun is I have a PDF. And this, the number one question I always got when people were diagnosed with diabetes is, what can I eat? And I just gave you an explanation of nice passengers on your train and not how to get like so many passengers. So if you want a more detailed guide of that, you can go and download this like free PDF. It's like 2 pages. It's really simple, but this is the way I eat. And it's based off the plate method. It's a very simple way to eat, but it means you don't have to count calories. You're going to know exactly, you can go anywhere, whether you're on vacation or you're doing, you're at a holiday at a family friend's house. In the US, we're coming up on like Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming soon. And you don't want to have to sit there and like get a cup and try to figure out how much serve. No, this way. It's like you visually can see and figure out, okay, this is on my plate. This is how many vegetables I'm going to need. This is how much protein and fats I need. This is how many carbohydrates. So the gift is, it's so great because you can use it anywhere at any time. I do this all the time, even when I'm on vacation. So I'll indulge every once in a while, but I don't gain like 10 pounds now every time I vacation. Like I'm able to kind of keep it in check.
That's great. As we're coming into summer, I need to know that too. So I will post the links to your free guide. I will also post a link to your webinar masterclass that you're doing. How else can people connect with you and work with you?
Oh man, you guys can find me everywhere. I'm on like everything these days. I just want to get the word out. You can find me on Instagram and on Facebook under Jelina Shah Consulting. I have a Facebook group that you can join if you want like free tips, like just like little, I get in there and I talk to everyone, and it's a community. I told you one of my values is community and belonging, and I wanted a safe space for people. So I have a Facebook group called the Sugar Bombs. I got on TikTok. I mean, as I like to call myself, as an elder millennial, as I like to call myself, I got onto TikTok under the name Dr. Sugar Bomb. So you can find me there.
I saw that. That made me laugh. That was great.
So yeah, there's lots of spaces to connect with me. I have a website. You can email me. I really love connecting with people. I love answering people's questions. I feel like I want to help people not struggle the way that I did, and anything I can do to serve somebody so that they are living as the happiest and healthiest version of themselves, because I feel like that's my mission, then I am all here for it. So yeah, please come find me. I would love to connect.
Awesome. I will put all the links to all of those social media accounts in the comments, in the post, and also on here. So thank you so much. I have loved our conversation. Have you got any last words of wisdom? One thing that you would want people to know and remember from this conversation?
Yes, I think one of the other things I hear a lot, especially when people get diagnosed with something like diabetes, because there's such a stigma. I just want to remind everyone that like it's never too late. Like you may not be back to exactly where you were before, but it is never too late to change. And you can use this as an opportunity to make changes so that you feel as the best version of yourself. And I know it feels like an uphill battle, but it is never too late to change. It may not be easy, but it is possible. And you just need to ask for help from the right people and get support. And there are plenty of places to do that. So that's my one takeaway is it's never too late to change.
So very true. Wonderful advice. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. As I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, I can feel your passion. I love your passion. I know that you're here to serve. I encourage you who are listening, the audience, please do reach out to Dr. Jelina Shah, and just, the journey is just beginning. It's very exciting. So thank you so much for your time, and we will speak very soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.